And that is critically important also because the idea of the relevance of your work is critically important, but relevance in the terms of your context. Because Dr. Ezra is correct in saying that it doesn't have to be new, but what impact, what are the implications within your context? Because, I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, really, right? But the fact is, as we do things, is how do we make it relevant? Where am I going to have my impact? So that becomes important, and it's your responsibility to make that very clear. It is your responsibility also, as a good technique, and I've been using it all the time, is that in looking at my impact, is even if you put it in a narrative form, the reviewer should be able to kind of create bullets of what your main points are, especially the implications you're going to be using and the rationale for their work. Why is this important? Because of the question, so what, that was asked of Dr. Esnad, simply means, therefore, why is this important? Sometimes I always tell my students when they want to propose their dissertation, I always say, so why should I spend my time to read this work? And you have to convince me. It's a harsh question that I ask the students all the time. I say, before you come to me, let me know why should I spend my time to read this work? And if you cannot convince me, I prefer you to go elsewhere. Now I can help you sometimes to show you why your work is important. But if you cannot tell me why your dissertation is important, then you are not ready. So if you cannot tell us why your proposal, your study is important, you are not ready to submit a proposal. Because what I do, you are building the case, you are selling your research, convincing me that this piece of research I'm doing, even if it is not relevant to you, it is critically important in my context. Either I'm gonna add maybe to the theory, or am I just for practical importance? And do not underestimate, when you talk about implications, the practical impact, the practical importance of your work. Because many of us would not really be lending any extra things to the theory. The theories are there. But oftentimes the theory is centered around America and England and a few other countries. And Africa and the Caribbean left out. So you have to show, I'm taking this theory, contextualize it. And these are the expected implications and the impact, and this is why it is important. But it is your job to convince the reviewer. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for those insightful tips and words of advice. So now I will just open it up to the floor. What questions do we have for our panelists? And feel free to unmute yourself. I mean, unless we see an issue there with folks talking on top of each other, please unmute yourself and just, say, hey, I am so-and-so from so-and-so, and here's my question. First person gets a prize.
Hi, I'm Araba Osei, doctoral candidate, Purdue University. I just have a question in relation to what Dr. Brown said about letting your proposal align with the theme of AERA and the SIG. I'm just wondering if the proposal you're submitting is more linked or more aligned with the case 6 objectives and not necessarily the AERA, is that a problem?
Well, this is a problem because I think the case 6 objective isn't really, I don't see any non-alignment between the two, in that the case 6 focuses on Caribbean research and Africa and the Caribbean, basically. But whatever AERA theme is very broad and international, and it could be related to your context. So for instance, a few years ago, that's talking about poverty and education, etc. That's very broad. But every country in the world can address that within their context. So no matter what their theme is, and the theme for AERA is always cognizant of the fact that they are an international, they're no longer an American organization. They're an international organization. So the theme has to capture, has to encompass all of that, and allows each division and each SIG really, within their context, within their focus, link their work to that. So the focus of the SIG will be on studies in the Caribbean and in Africa. Whatever theme that AERA has, you can contextualize that same theme to your context.
Thank you. I think that was my prize.
If I could add to that, thanks, Dr. Brown. I would say that the KISS call would be an extension of the AERA call. So the themes, the theme is the same. What KISS would have to do is to extend AERA's theme and specifically draw together or put together a proposal or call for papers rather that aligns very well, but extends it to examine issues related to the Caribbean and Africa. So it's the same theme, it's an extension of that theme. Think of it this way. And what is nice about the AERA call is that every SIG would have a subsection that specifically outlines how you can apply that within a specific context or within a specific focus as per the SIG. And then what you do is that if you're interested in the SIG and you think that SIG fits your work, then you would submit with the guidelines of that particular SIG as is presented in that call. So I think it's really an extension. There's no separation. And I would agree with my colleague here. And I think the specifications of the SIG are very useful for you to determine how then do I carve out a paper and craft one that really works within the guidelines of what is presented for me and allows for me to ensure that the theme and the requirements for that particular theme, they are met.
Yeah, I just add one thing to that. Sometimes your paper itself, maybe I suppose what I call, like, for instance, you want to do something like, say, special education and look at the Caribbean. But it's also special education SIG.
Yeah.
What the SIG does is, we'll say, okay, this paper is really, really good. I will meet with the other SIG and sort of have the two SIGs come together and say, okay, we gotta accept this paper. So it doesn't mean that because you talk about special education, it doesn't relate to the Caribbean.
Yeah.
The SIGs are very flexible where that is concerned to say, okay, how do I take this paper and bring another SIG in or another division, which we have done in the past. So people will be accepted, because really you're straddling two areas. So it's important to remember that the SIG itself has that flexibility.
Yeah, good point.
More questions.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. I have a quick question. So my name is Kat Stevens. I'm a rising third year at UMass Amherst, where I'm earning my PhD. And this will be my first time submitting. Any particular things that doctoral students should be looking out for, or any particular kind of pitfalls that you typically see for doctoral students? Thank you.
Well, to me, the major pitfall, well, first, the criteria set out by AERA, and whatever the SIG sends you, you stick to that. Let us not be creative in how as some people have done it, because it's also respecting the time of the reviewer, because in the past I've met very good papers, but it's out of search to find. And if you are reviewing 10, 20 papers, you don't have the time to do that. So it is easier to reject than to go spend the time going through. This is why I think this is why something the SIG does is say, let's meet with our rising scholars and doctoral students to have a sort of what they call a fire chat with them to go through that whole process. So I think it's just really, you stick to that. But remember also, think again of your proposal defense for your dissertation, and they have all gone through. And if you're successful at that, basically the same format, you know, basically the same format. You put your rationale, you put your literature review, you got your methodology, you look at your results and all of that. Now also with AERA, sometimes you are still working out the results, or you have your findings, the paper is not completed. But that's fine, you know, because we have accepted, I have accepted papers that are still in the processes. How far in the process? It can't be just a beginning study, because I know fully well you will not complete it by the time AERA comes around. At least you should have your data. You should have your data, and you should start the process of analyzing the data and have initial findings. So even with initial findings, you could build a case of why this is important and what are the possible implications of that. So what you do, you create what I call a hunger for us to hear your real paper by the time you present it at the AERA conference. So not because you have not completed a paper means you should not submit it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I am Laura Bristol. I used to be the co-chair for the SIG a few years ago, but now I'm the program manager for human resource development at the CARICOM Secretariat here in Guyana. Just wanted to add to what Lance and Talia said, and I should let you know that Lance dragged Talia, Joyanne, and I into AERA many years ago. So it's good to see us all in this space. And Talia and I dragged them into qualitative research. Well, not Talia, Joyanne and I dragged them into qualitative research.
Yes, you did.
And we dragged Talia along as well. But things, humor aside, just wanted to add to what both Talia and Lance were saying. One of the mistakes I think that some of us make as young novice researchers coming up is that we tend to want to put everything in the 2000 proposal. We don't want to leave anything out. And what the proposal requires is very, very skillful determination of what is important as it relates to not just the theme for AERA that particular year, not just the objectives of this SIG, but also what's the objectives of the research project that you're engaging in. Quite often as a reviewer, you have so much potential in some of the submissions, but because the person wanted to give me the entire garden, it was impossible to make a determination what is this paper is about, and then how would we line it up when we go to the program chair, and the program chair has to make determinations about clustering the papers to put it into presentations. So that's one of the mistakes I think we make. The other mistakes that sometimes the other avoidance, and it's something that I think we want to encourage, is that quite often people play it safe. Yeah, and sometimes you have to try to be risky around your methodological approach. Sometimes we want to go to the safe ones, the proven ones, the tested ones, and the ones that we avoid are the ones that actually we want to see. I mean, even though it mightn't be absolutely perfect, we want to see what this looks like in the engagement with the world. Just wanted to point out that the paper that Talia, Lance, and I got the award for was for very risky research for us, because we used photography at that time to look into the practices of principals in Trinidad and Tobago. And none of us had used that approach before. We were all brand new to that approach. But the point is, take some risks as well around your exploration. One of the strengths that the Caribbean and the African diaspora has is that we have unique ways of coming into encounter with the world and with others. And sometimes we need to explore and push the boundaries of those indigenous approaches to be able to make sense of situations around early childhood, special educational needs, and the list will go on. So take some risks as well around your methodological approach.